I remember many years ago, I read a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it was probably one of the better books I've ever read. So, without going too much into detail about the actual book, what struck out to me was you've got four options. And number one is you become an employee, which is E. You become a self employed person, which is S. You become a business owner, which is B. Or you become an investor, which is I. So you've got four options. So you start off working a job wherever you are in your career, and then you move into a self-employed person. So a self-employed person doesn't mean typically we think of builders and tradesmen when you think self-employed in the UK. But self-employed person could be you're pretty much gonna do the job you're doing anyway. So I worked as a recruiter and I ended up being kind of a self-employed recruiter, and then I transitioned to a business owner. So that's the position you ended up in. And the point I want to make is it in the UK, it's becoming less and less viable to become a business owner. So when I was in my 20s, the idea was to become a business owner. That was deemed the only way to actually make money. To become a business owner, before in my parents' day, you could very well, everyone knows this, you could support one income, you could support the whole house. And you can have two holidays, two cars on the driveway. Everything was cheaper back then. We won't go into why that is, but that's pretty much what it was. So it became out of necessity, you have to become a business owner. And that was a position everyone's in and was in. However, becoming a business owner now is very, very different to 10 years ago, even in the UK. Taxes are much higher. It's very difficult to actually run the business, let alone make it successful. I'm talking about HMRC's administration, going through paying tax. Half of your income goes. It's very difficult to take money out of the business without getting taxed heavily. Yeah. So even if you get ahead, you still get knocked down. You have to do extraordinarily well or have some really, really good years in order for you can't be mediocre at business. And that's just being that. Now that's from my point of view. Everyone else's point of view. Let's say you invent a product. Before you could bring it to market yourself. You would run it, you would run sales teams, and you can do that. Now, if you have a product or an item or something you want to sell, whether it's perishables or not, you're forced to go to Tesco's, Sainsbury's, pitch them the idea, Argos, whatever it is, or go onto Amazon. Like, you've got no option. Let's say, example, you have loads of items you want to sell. Would you open a warehouse or would you just go to Amazon? Optionally, you would go to Amazon and just list on there. You wouldn't make a warehouse. So the point I'm trying to make is the idea that business owner is the way to go now probably isn't the greatest idea. It's equivalent of being an employee 20, 30, 40 years ago, in my opinion. You can survive, you can sustain, but the smartest way, actually, in my point of life, is to actually become an investor. And I've always done it. Like, whether it's money in the stock market, investing in other people's business, investing in yourself, your business, it doesn't really matter. But for me, the only way to actually get rich or wealthy now is an investor. From a tax perspective, yes, an investor is the way to go. Now, if you're probably watching this video still, you might think, okay, great, Cads is going to tell us how to become an investor. Because my understanding of being an investor was you needed a large amount of capital. Like, you're a millionaire and you're investing in these startup businesses. That's not true. I think investment is, you can invest with £10. You can invest with a very small amount. And I'm not going to go into, there's a million ways to start a business and to have a business. And there's a million ways to become an investor. But I think we're moving, well, I am anyway, moving to a point in my life where the money's great, it's moved there, but keeping the businesses going is not making as much sense as it was before. I'm valuing time with family, health, things that you neglect over the years have become more apparent. It doesn't make sense. Take, for example, Bitcoin. If you would have just invested 100K in your business and grew it, if I invested what I put in back into my business and just put it in Bitcoin, I would have been better off. So it makes financial sense to invest into assets and to everything else rather than a business that you earn money that just devalues, inflates. Whereas instead of making a product, you should have invested in someone that has a warehouse like Amazon, and your money would have grown better. That's just what I'm seeing over the years and what I'm going to see probably in the future. So transitioning to investor, I have a video where I want to see if I can dig it out somewhere. I'm sure it's on one of my hard drives, where I made £5 in a month by investing in the stock market. And I recorded it on my phone, on my computer, and I was so happy. And it was the point in life where I said, this is what the end goal is. And this is what the position you want to end up in. And whether you're an employee, whether you're unemployed, if you talk to anyone under 30, nobody wants to work. And that's probably why, I mean, there's so many immigrants being brought over to the country, because everyone knows it's a bad deal, but the immigrants will work those jobs. And to me, in theory, in practicality, working a job is pretty much a death sentence now. And especially if you want to run a house, have a family, run things the way you want. You want to have the holidays, the life that our parents had in the UK. And I don't want to make it a negative video, because there's plenty of opportunity out there. It's just being smart with where you're moving. Like, I'll give you another example. I was having this conversation with my wife, and she was saying, look, I want our kids, better be one of my sons to be a tradesman. And I was like, look, we're going to make the same mistake that our parents did. Because I say doctor, being a doctor, you know, she's Asian, being a doctor isn't that great of a job now, to the point where some doctors are unemployed, to the point. And what ended up happening, she said, oh, I want him to be a tradesman. They make good money, blah, blah, blah. But I said, look, we're going to make the same mistake. By the time he gets through and becomes a business owner, employee, it's going to change. There might not even be jobs. There might not be worth making a job. But throughout history, investments have always done better than, how can I put it, than actually starting a business. Like, you can diversify. There's so much things you can do. But don't make the mistake of having one target and then saying, okay, for the next 20 years, that's what I'm going to run and do with. Because it just doesn't work out. And you need to start building your investment. And that's why I mentioned, look, I made £5 a month many, many years ago. And since then, I've always invested in the stock market. And I've always had that income coming in every single day. And to the point where I've got quite good at it. I don't know what I'm doing, but I've got quite good at it. And it's because you have the cash flow. And business is about cash flow. And investment is a business. And you need large capital. But stuff like property worked before. It doesn't work now. So point of the video is your end goal needs to be either a very large business owner to make sense. And this is what I'm seeing. Or a very specialist, self-employed, high-value trade. And I can't think of one off the top of my head. Yeah, recruitment is not one of them. That's better off in the business owner category. Or you grow as an investor. You start with £5 and you just chuck money into whatever it is and then learn. And as it goes, it goes. So, look, I hope you enjoyed somewhat of this video. I just wanted to put my thoughts out there. And I think I'll do daily videos on my thoughts that nobody will watch, but I couldn't care less. I wish you all the best and take care.